Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, Squid Game Season 2 has come out, and I thought I would touch. I never really finished that whole series, so I thought I would do like a deep dive into the whole character of Ilham, the old man, who ends up being one of the masterminds of the game. And what's unique about this character is it's unsuspected. It's a surprise. You don't know it's coming when you see that old man. And his oldness is part of the surprise of him being someone who likes to watch these gladiatorial style games. And you end up really like how Sung-gyu like cuddles up to him and kind of looks out for him, and you kind of pity him because no one wants to pick the old man to be on their team, yet he helps them with their strategy in the tug of war, and he has a way about him that makes you like him. So to me, that's clever writing. Why? Because the villain, he has this dual nature of being one of the bad guys, yet he has qualities where you wouldn't even suspect him. And that's a brilliant form of the faces of evil. That there's different faces, and not every one of them will look and act like how you suspect. And so when we first hear he has the brain tumor, you're like, oh dang, so he's in this place, and he just wants to have a final hurrah before he goes. Yet, he passes peacefully in a high-rise building with a great view down below. And with his best buddy by his side, which I thought was interesting. And if you look at him, he wanted to feel alive again, and he mentions how, like, this point where can you have so much money to where you just stop feeling you don't really know how to have fun anymore? Because when you're poor, as he noted, you know, you don't really have that same sense of joy. And then when you're super rich, you get bored of things. And we kind of notice this pattern in the real world, where you get the P. Diddy's of the world, and you get a lot of perverts like Matt Gaetz, that Republican. Time and time again, we will see wealthy people use their money in very strange, kinky ways. And even if you look at that show on Netflix, The Gentleman, it's about this English aristocrat, and there's another aristocrat, and he has a collection of Hitler products, you know, paintings of Hitler, and has, I think it was a testicle of Hitler's in a jar. And it was a very awkward scene, has a lot of humor in it, but that does hint at some people can get so much money that they want to have something very odd and strange. And the whole idea of the Squid Game, where, yeah, it's a game kids played, but just that this older man, Ilham player number 1 in season 1, he and his buddy started it. They wanted to feel something, and the fact that he wanted to play himself is interesting. Now, we know that when he was faking dementia with Sung-gyun with the marble game, that he wasn't really shot, obviously. He had a way out. I would be curious, though, to see what would happen if someone would have gone after him when it was that lights out at bedtime and everyone was shanking each other. What would have happened? But the front man, one of the first clues, though, was when the front man, who's the brother of the cop, when he sees the old man, you know, crying out, "I'm afraid," and all this, and he's on top of the bunk beds, and then the front man gives a direction how to end it. That's our first really clever clue to be like, hey, why is it pans right to the old man when the groveling of everyone else falls on deaf ears, right? Because you'll see people grovel for their lives all throughout the 2 seasons, right? And it doesn't affect anybody. But as soon as that old man does, well, that's a different thing, isn't it? And so the relationship of the old man and Sung-gyun is quite unique and highlights a deeper level of how you can make friends with a monster and not even really know it. And when you also look at him, you think he's kind of brave as an old man in a real way. Because when you're old like that, your body is the most fragile. And he's putting himself in a very vulnerable situation where somebody could easily have sneaked up at him in the night, put him down. What if Sung-gyun and no one else would have taken a liking to him? There's so many things that could have went wrong. But yet, in the first episode, he is one of the players who he's smiling and he eagerly goes while the other people are frozen. You see that. And so he actually shows us a clue that he knows you have to get to the finish line before the ticker goes out. And see, season 1 had that great way of dropping us clues without revealing the entire plot. Nothing felt forced. And so that was really good writing about putting this old man character in there. And the masks that they choose and the designs, say quite a lot. The front man's room is black and gold. He's got a very strange mechanical puppet jazz thing. Old-fashioned phone. Always puts the receiver down the same way. And we learn about the old man's mask when towards the end. When the front man is like, why don't you greet your guests? And he's like, I'm gonna have more fun playing myself. And that idea of masks is very popular and common because the type of mask you choose does reflect something about you. I remember in ceramics class having to make masks, and I made mine with mathematical problems all over them. And my teacher didn't get it. I made like a screaming like, ah! Like the Scream movie, the eyes and the mouth. I did that. I made it the shape of that, and then I put all over the mask, somewhere around here, with like graphing, like how you have your graphs, and then you have to draw your lines, and then like, multiplication, fractions, stuff all over it. It was pretty funny, and then we fired those masks, and it was nice, and so. The type of mask you're drawn to says a lot. What type of masks scare you and what kind reflect your personality. So he had kind of a very piggish looking mask, yet he was so frail and skinny. Something to say there. Yet the piggy bank, who decided on that? And that whole bounty from above angle and the classic every kid has a piggy bank. My children have a piggy bank. It's a tradition. Now they're made of plastic, but we bought old-fashioned handmade ceramic ones. You can throw them on the ground and crack them. Some have a cork you pull out. But it teaches kids to save money. So the irony of the old man having the mask of a piggy, and then this piggy bank where you're with a bunch of people in debt who didn't learn to save their money wisely, who spent it frivolously, and now they have sold off part of their body parts. Remember, Sung-gyun owes those mafia guys parts of his body because he doesn't want to pay. It's something to think about. The irony and the whole symbolism of the pig. And the pig gets in the mud, doesn't it? Now, those players are like mud compared to those very, very rich elites who have luxury and comfort and can buy whatever they want because they have so much money to bet on the players and also to indulge in these gold gilded sparkling masks and whatnot. And that's really something to think about, isn't it? Where the old man's mask represents an animal that does a form of cannibalism of its own. Mom pigs, they can eat their young, rolls around in the muck. They bite their owner sometimes. We'll see people who are hog farmers, they get bit a lot. Some people lose their arms because of the hog. And so, the old man having that animal mask, something to that, isn't there? And the old man urinating on himself in fear. And pigs, sometimes they poop and it gets on them and it just stays there. And sometimes they'll pee in that mud and then just roll around. But also in that scene, player 456, Song Gi-yeon, he feels sorry for the old man and wraps him around with that. And then later, the old man gives a jacket to Song Gi-yeon before the selection of the marble game. And it's important for us to look at that old man character and think, how can we treat our elders with respect? But to know that evil ages, isn't it? Because if the old man hadn't been old and he'd been young, vivacious, loud, in his muscular prime, we would automatically start to hate him. He'd be maybe snarky or suspecting, we would suspect him more. But a kind old man, well, that's something there. See, Hollywood has done well with the evil old lady in the woods, the crazy old lady who, Hansel and Gretel, she's got a candy house, but she eats kids, right? It's overplayed. We haven't had a whole lot of very well acted old men who turn out to be villains. And when the old man tells Song Gi-yeon that they're kind of like racehorses, this really highlights how the players themselves are seen as base animals. And in season 2, the suitcase man, who goes around playing that dachi game, I believe it's pronounced, with the people who are in debt, he buys food and then buys some scratchers, those gambling scratchers, and people will pick the gambling over their food. And so that's just highlighting how the gambling addiction, which is haram in Islam, it's haram to gamble, people will get consumed by it. The Sopranos had an episode in one of their seasons where a guy kept borrowing money from Tony. He was playing with the high rollers and he was unable to pay some things and he was getting smacked around for it. We know that this is true in the real world. If you don't pay your debts, the loan sharks will come to collect. So, remember, these people are desperate, but they willingly chose to stay because they have democracy to vote. And as there are more and more players getting eliminated, the people start to change because they're closer to the prize. So it's easy to hate the old man and think, how could you be so cruel and watch this? But at the same time, we ourselves watch literal animals do things and don't interfere with nature. Right? Isn't it the atheists who say we're all animals, we're all apes, we're all monkeys? Joe Rogan likes to say we're just like chimpanzees. And you'll get people like Kyle Kalinske who are like, well, bonobos just sit around and do this all day. They're humping and this and that. And we hear things about our beastly nature, our animalistic nature. In Islam, the human is not on the same level as the animal. We don't call ourselves animal. We are special just because we breastfeed. Mammals who have the ability to give their young milk, and we birth our children instead of having them hatch from an egg. That doesn't equate us to the same thing. But there are pagans who liken humanity and animals as a brotherhood on the planet. So it's a lot of different cultures that put humans too close to animals. And so the old man and those elites being able to attach themselves and watch people act in the most barbaric ways, like hyenas, really just raw animalism, right? Can you really blame them? And we know that the Aztecs had their version of barbarity. We know that humans are fully capable of this, and that is still around today. The Colosseum, I haven't ever got to go there, but I do want to go there just to really be in the presence of a place where we got to watch people do such a thing on a grand stage, and people would eat bread and cheer and watch it. And there is something about the warrior who goes into the field and he's slashing and dashing. And how you have to have a sense of ruthlessness in order to survive. So the ethical nature of the Squid Game is very much a paradox, because people chose, and remember, those people who voted to leave, many of them came back. Right? They needed the money, but they got themselves into trouble with the money. No one forced them to gamble. Their own personal greed is what led them to where they were, because they were selfish and stupid. Okay? When an animal like a cow can be really dumb and not watch where it's going, its hoof goes into a hole, they snap their ankle, donezo. So sometimes animals can be very dumb and not be as aware and conscious as humans, but humans, I like to watch Fail Army on YouTube, they can be just as stupid. Just as stupid. So there's a form of cynicism, pessimism, and nihilism that can come when people see a broad range of poor human behaviors. Think about this. People will say the Squid Game is unethical, the old man is evil, but those same people will say humans are a virus on Earth. They'll say humans cause harm to Mother Earth, astaghfirullah, so people have to have less children in order to save the planet. People will also say humans are cruel for eating meat, so humans shouldn't be allowed to have a nice ribeye with mashed potatoes and gravy and some green beans. No. That we should eat bugs like the birds and the chickens and not be able to enjoy a juicy rack of elk ribs with some barbecue sauce. Think about it. So you already have people today who despise their fellow human. So if you despise your fellow human to such a degree that you rank them below an animal, you can do such things as invent a gladiatorial arena where people compete for money. And the brilliance of the old man, I think, is that he recognizes that money is a huge motivation for certain people. And his relationship with money is quite different than the players. And he immersed himself around the people who were playing to see their behaviors. And it wasn't like he was sheltering himself behind the screen. He got down on the ground and went in. How many of us, if we were so indulgent, would compete in a game like that knowingly? See, the participants in the Squid Game, they had no idea that it would be life and death when they first arrived. The first game, they had no idea what was going to happen. Okay? But after red light, green light was over, they had full knowledge that to be eliminated is to die. And some voted to stay and others to go. And the brilliant thing is that democracy, when you hear a lot of Americans say, oh, my democracy, we're saving the world with democracy, direct democracy, which the founding fathers invented the Electoral College in order to avoid the direct democracy, because the president is not selected via the popular vote. They are selected for the Electoral College. Okay. And so your vote doesn't necessarily sway the elections as much as you think it does. But in Squid Game, it's a direct democracy. And you can see how other people, they want to leave, but they can't because the majority says no. So their life depends upon what the masses want, not your individual rights. Okay? So that old man has got to see, with the countless games he's watched, how many times people are totally willing to sacrifice other people's lives so that they can play a game of life and death to get money. How would you view humanity if you watched over and over people shank each other for money? How would you look at humanity? People will watch a video of somebody kicking a puppy and say humans are scum. But if you're watching people murk each other with a fork because they see this piggy stuffed with billions of dollars, or wons, whatever they call their currency in South Korea, think about that. How would your view slowly change over time? You'll see feminists that get burnt out with men because of all men are pigs. Because they cheat on their wives, or they go to strip clubs, but they expect to, get a pure, chaste virgin after they've had a debauched lifestyle. You see their burnt out nihilism come forward just after a couple relationships. And further, you'll see men, they'll get cheated on, and then they'll be like, all women are whores. I'm staying single. I'm on my MGTOW era. Men going their own way era. You'll see them go into the red pill spaces. You see? And that's just with one event. So, it's fun to look at the Squid Games through the different perspectives. And the old man, old Ilam, he does that for us. Because he goes into the both worlds. Even though he's fragile. And that bolt of danger and thrill, wanting to feel alive again, even though he pissed himself, he still kept going. And as we know, not every game was about raw strength. That's another thing. And even in Season 2, it's not just about raw strength. Some of it is about teamwork, especially when they're on this rainbow track and they're all tied to each other side by side and they gotta play some kid games, spinning top and all that before it goes out. So it's not all about brute strength. Tug of War was, but it's also about strategy and working together and being able to trick your opponent to where they lose their footing. So it's fascinating. And it was a great twist when we learned he lived and then he got to die in that way. Some might have wanted him to die in a more brutal manner. But that the rich wanting to do something like that does highlight what money can do to you. But money is the whole idea around it, how we survive, how we have to get it. It's just fascinating. And in Season 2, we get to see a lot of someone worrying about medical debt. That guy whose little daughter, she's in the hospital. She's got some type of cancer, I believe it was. Was it bone marrow cancer? Bone cancer? Something like that. And her dad goes into the Squid Games and ends up dying. Excuse me. So we see the medical debt. We see gambling. We see people who want to find their relatives and smuggle them out of North Korea. All different motives. Okay? And remember, that old man, player number 1, he has access to the archives. They keep archives on all their players. They investigate their players before they invite them to play. They're contestants. So, they know what kind are more likely to stay in the game because they're desperate. They know the bad habits of those people And this makes an interesting contest. And each one of them will have different skills that relate to the games. Like in season 1 with the glass bridge, there was a guy there who was an actor also in Kung Fu Hustle. I like that movie, that satire. But he saw the tempered glass versus the non-tempered glass. And he was able to notice the difference between the glasses via the colors. And what did they do to make the contest harder? They turned the lights down. So every person has they make the game interesting, the games, because everyone has the capacity to pass it, and they're kids' games. So what's so difficult about it? Time, pressure, working as a team, knowing who to trust, having minor alliances, all that. So the old man, he has got to look at the types of personalities, the values of all these people, and taking that all into account, and how that would weigh heavy on someone's soul. It's fascinating to think about how, if you've seen so much of bad human behavior, how you can start to despise your fellow man, but also despise certain classes of people. Those with immense amounts of capital, and those with immense amount of debt. And looking how that happened. The different types of desperation. Desperation from medical debt. Desperation from, you have loan sharks who you've signed off your organs to. You name it. Okay? And each person tells like, what are you here for? Why did you accept? All that. And at the same time, the old man asked Sung-gyun, you have all that money and it's just sitting there. You shouldn't feel guilty, you earned it. And how badly our main character, player 456, wanted that money, right? How much he loved gambling, and how much of a crappy father, terrible husband, and terrible son he was, right? He was not good with money. Now he has a bunch of money and he just kind of gave up on life. And he could easily change people's lives. He does give a little bit here and there. But he didn't really become this sort of philanthropist helping the needy. He did help that lady's, the defector of North Korea's little brother who was in the orphanage and such. But he didn't become this bleeding heart. When you think about the rich people, putting that money in that piggy bank, is that more charitable and changing the lives of the players than someone who has a bunch of money and doesn't do anything really with it? What did Sung-gyun do with his money? Well, he's hired in season 2 a private, Delta Force to go after the players because he wants revenge. But think about how the old man and his others, most likely they made bets, but they put, from what we know, their own money, because they have so much of it, into that piggy bank. And that money changes that player's life, right? And they can do what they want with it. And remember, they microchip the winner. They keep tabs on him. They're able to observe, what does he do now that he's got all that money? So the old man, player 1, he's got to see what the players did before they won and after they won. What did they indulge in? What did they change? You got to look at the whole spectrum. Okay? How would we feel if we saw someone get so much money and they're not helping nobody, they're not doing, any type of animal welfare or helping newborns in the NICUs? No, they're just kind of sitting and loathing with their trauma. And they're not really doing much, are they? They're not fixing their lives. It's not what. And so, how would we view humanity, and the winners of the games in general. And they've gotten to see the stupidity of players, the humans in their entirety. What will they do? Who will they help? Who will they betray? You know, we're isolated from that, and we haven't been put in such a position. But the old man represents, when you fully analyze his character spectrum, quite a lot. And how smart he was to do the dementia bit when it was the marble game, because he wanted to test Sung-Gi-Yoon, player 456, his morality. Will he sacrifice me? Or will he take the honorable route and admit that he said odd instead of even, or even instead of odd? Will he trick me because I'm an old man? Will he sacrifice me and save his own bum even though he knows he secretly lost? See, he knows the treachery. He knows that. But Sung-Gi-Yoon, player 456, doesn't know the old man is, doing a bit. He doesn't know that he's one of the head honchos in the game at this point, and he'll have a way out. Think about it. So who's worse? In that moment, he was testing his morality because he's seen people do their worst. He's seen people lie and say and do anything in order to save themselves, even sacrifice their friend. Right? This is quite compelling. How would we deal with that? How would we? And that's the question that the old man makes us think about. It's really quite intriguing. Really quite intriguing. Let me know what you think. I really enjoyed Season 1 more than Season 2. Season 2, having a trans felt very forced. There wasn't as many surprises. The only unique angle really was the crypto angle. Crypto bros in there who sold fake coins and all that and did pump and dumps. That was a unique one. But, and the little girl, obviously with the strawberry beanie hat. But that season lacked the old man character. The front man played in the game, but that wasn't a surprise. Because we already were introduced to him. It was not a good angle, So, the old man is one of the greatest twists and turns of any series thus far that we've had in recent years. Because you didn't see it coming. They dropped some foreshadowing hints that you didn't notice. And his frailty made him go in the game anyways. And someone with that amount of money putting themselves in a position where people will not like them just because he's old. How many of us, when we're old, would want to be told that we're, useless and not getting picked? I think all of us, when you're playing PE in school and people are selecting teams and you're, fit, you don't get picked for the team, how does that feel? And so this old man went through not getting picked. He didn't have to subject himself to that. And a lot of rich people can isolate themselves from the lower classes. This old man went right in to the humiliation, the fear, the sight of the death. There's a lot of tough people. Well, let me put it this way. A lot of people who think they're tough because they play violent video games. But they've never actually seen it in person. They're behind a screen. There's a lot of people who type tough and they don't actually think about the person they're insulting and what could really happen in the real world. Physical reality, not the digital reality. But that old man, player number 1, he went to the physical reality and didn't just watch it on the screen and indulge. That's something very unique. And I admire that. So, I kind of wish we would have got more secrets to, how the games were decided But I do feel like later we'll learn that those elites, they chose those games based on their own personalities, things of their own concoction. And the fact that it's children's games, a lot of people will be like, oh, this must be easy because children do it. And yet adults are failing when their life is on the line. And so that's a unique turn. But when they're playing the marbles, notice how the old man said he used to always play marbles and he always used to play tug of war, and that the set for the marble game looked like some place he lived. And we know they have lots of wealth. They could easily have made the scene in the design that the masterminds liked, that related to their own personal history. Something that they personally liked, and so on and so forth, and that they have a lot of say in what kind of games are there. Because the VIPs, the visitors, they seem to just want to indulge and watch, and that they're the customer, and they get to just enjoy the theater that has been created. They were not the designer and director and architect. Whereas the old man, him and his buddies, who we haven't learned their other identities, they're the ones who designed the stage, right? They're the ones who designed that Colosseum. And that also shows you another unique side to how they have this duality of mixing death and then the scene of kids' games, right? Now, how many of us would expected a horror house, like there was a scene in The Walking Dead where Connie is in a house, it's disheveled, and then there's these weird cannibals there, and she's in this very scary house with cannibals. We are very used to, or like countless movies about haunted hospitals, haunted asylums, and haunted mansions and haunted castles. They look spooky, we expect it to be scary. Squid Game decided to say, hey, rather the old man, essentially, him and his buddies decided, let us mix innocence, like innocent scenery, with complete annihilation. Those are our two very contrasting elements they brought together, right? That is what makes it quite unique. And then mix money in there. It's easy to, also in The Walking Dead, what was the name? The governor, he has his town, with the eye patch. He makes these walkers go on chains, there's lights, and these guys go at it and they're fighting each other. It's kind of like a WWE style fake show. It looks like you would expect something to go on there, right? It's set up to be kind of like, ooh, this is cray-cray. But Squid Game and the architects, the elites who designed the stages, did something that, where people let their guard down. When they first go in, the bright colors, the kids' scenery, this isn't so scary. They get cocky, they get arrogant, and then all of a sudden, things change. And then the stairs being pink, and then really weird shapes, And in season 2, there's this kind of like carousel, and then all these different colored doors, and the music is like this happy, clapping kid song. And then, as soon as that music stops, reminds me of musical chairs in a way, you have to group up in whatever number they say and go in there and get blasted if you are out and you don't find the right one. So, the old man, player number 1, when you think about how they were the designers of that game, he has this softness to him where he's likable, but they engineered a game that played with the human's mind. Very, very unique. Let me know what you think about the old man. Any other insights that you have about him. And, do you think there's any other character that's been a plot twist to that degree? to where you were really like, say, what? I didn't see that coming. And how Sung Gyun kept that marble for a while. You know, just thinking about the old man. You know, it's fascinating. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Join the blog to support the channel and read other things that I write at www.subscribestar.com/mahonarchive. Hope to see you there.